I'm Julia Kolchinsky, a professor in English and creative writing, and I am so delighted to have my dear friends here, Tina and Jim, and for the support of the Environmental Studies program and the Beck reading series that made this visit possible. They've already gotten to spend time with my Poetics of the Body class, and now they are here to share the incredible way that they care for each other, for writing, for the natural world around them, and for the home that they built. And rather than gushing about loving Tina and knowing her for way too many years because we met in graduate school, the University of Oregon, I met her right when Tina and Jim were beginning their blossoming love story, when the house was just beginning to be built. I'm going to introduce a wonderful creative writing student who is going to introduce Tina and Jim. So Elizabeth, come on up. Give her a big round of applause.
Hello, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Keppen, and I'm a sophomore creative writing major here at Denison, and I have the privilege of introducing Tina and James tonight. I first became familiar with the work of Tina and James as I read their book, Glass Cabin. I was sitting at the Philadelphia airport awaiting my flight home to Columbus, and I sat right alongside this couple as they churned up dirt from the ground, staked poles in pooled water, sourced glass panes from a church. I watched these two build a house from nothing. Glass Cabin recounts the 13 years Tina and James spent building a house on the Hydrangea Ridge in Alabama. Their lush descriptions of even the most barren places fanned a hearth within me. Finding home in the earth, in their own bodies, as well as each other's, these writers exhibit an unmatched tenderness and appreciation for this life we all share. As Tina writes, symbiotically, we bloom as one. Tina Mozelle Braziel's work has appeared in the Cincinnati Review, the Southern Humanities Review, Poetry, and several other esteemed journals. She is also the author of Known by Salt and Rooted by Thirst. James Braziel is the author of The Stitch Walking Love, Birmingham, Weather Vane, 35 Miles, and Snakeskin Road, and is also the recipient of a fellowship from the Georgia Council for the Arts. Together, James and Tina are the co-authors of Glass Cabin and have received fellowships from Hot Springs National Park and the Alabama State Council for the Arts. Their work deals heavily with themes of nature, family, and wilderness, grappling with how we find a place for ourselves in this wildness of the world. I felt myself sinking lower into the earth as I read their work, wanting to be as close to the ground as possible. Trapped in an airport, I wanted nothing more than to reach my hands into the rubble of the earth and pluck a home from it. In the words of James, where we live is who we are. Without further ado, it is my great privilege to introduce Tina Mozelle Braziel and James Braziel.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Also, and thank you, Julia. Thank you, Department of English, the Beck series, and the Environmental Studies program here. Let's see how I'll start to tell the story. Is that I always wanted a writing life. And back in 2010, I was actually living in Cincinnati, and I got a job at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. So I went down there and I moved down with my son Dylan, who was finishing up his last year of high school. I brought him with me. And we were living in an apartment, and it was taking half of the money I made to pay the rent on that apartment. So I knew that having a writing life was not going to be possible if I did not somehow get rid of the rent and not have a mortgage. So one of the things that happens, there's a place, we were talking earlier about Auburn University, and the architecture students there, they make homes for people who don't have a lot in a place called Hale County. And Tina and I actually went there, and it was just very inspiring. And I was like, I think I could do this. So I started driving out from Birmingham, and I started looking for land. And you know what I would do is I would stop in gas stations, restaurants, whatever, and I would go up to people and I would be like, hey, I'm looking for like an acre or two of land. Anyone would sell some? And I want to build this cabin. And inevitably, like so many times, I cannot tell you this, but so many times the people would say to me, I want to do that. I want to do that very thing. Yeah. And then they would tell me the story about the cabin or the house they wanted to build. So what was interesting to me was that when I started all this, I thought it was like this uncommon dream, but it really was this very common dream. And the other thing that would happen is they would just be so excited, and then they would get kind of dim, and you could just see it. And it's like there was something that was stopping them from doing this thing they wanted, circumstance, a situation, a job, or something like that. So in part of writing Glass Cabin, I hope that whatever it is that you guys are dreaming about, whatever it is that you want to do, that this book inspires you to get there, to pluck that home that you were talking about earlier. Doesn't have to mean that you build a home in the woods like us. So the other part of this story is, all right, I found the land, everything, but I fell in love with Tina. We went dancing at the 280 Boogie, and there was only one problem. Tina made a phone call to this person named Julia at University of Oregon. Some of you may know her. And she was like, you should come to Oregon. And Tina said, okay. So Tina was, that's right. It's all you do. So, yes, that's right. So Tina was off to Oregon for 2 years to get her M.F.A. And I promised her, I said, when you come home from Oregon, I'm going to have you a cabin built. So this first poem I'm going to read is about, we had just put in the foundation. You'll see one in the slide where it's just these posts. We had to dig like 4 feet in the ground. We had to do this over the summer, and it was just such hard work. The other thing to know is that Tina was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and they believe in the apocalypse, and that's a part of this poem. It's called Everlast. Think of ice, cool water, the way people call iced tea nice tea here. Try to think winter. My hands and wrists stay numb from spearing rock bars like javelins through clay chert loam, numb as handled wood and steel. Sweat burned my eyes a few days ago. Now the salt in me has gone. A sign I won't survive the apocalypse they taught you in church, and you still believe is coming. But I have become more body than mind, like I wanted. Accept me this way, my love. All sweat digging 4-foot holes in the earth, wanting to believe and just keep going, even though it's getting harder to tell that lie. And when you come home to me, I will ease the ache of your walking, like you did for the women at your church, bending over a basin of water to wash their feet, still encased in stockings. So this next poem, we got the post in, got the subfloor down, we got the walls in, we got the exposed rafters on the ceiling, and there was a roof to put up. And this is about putting on that roof, and it's also about being on ladders, which those of you who have done that know it's not necessarily a good thing. It's called It Will Happen. 1. When I get too close to a paper nest in the eaves, when the wasps give no buzzing warning, when their stings startle, send me in the ladder I am climbing back to the dirt. Every yellow jacket arrow I get on the ground, I record the bright ache of, because if you get used to something, you control it, right? 2, the ladder falls on a loop. Tina's father fell 50 feet when the rung he clutched broke. Everyone thought he would die. I don't think Tina's ever accepted he made it. And a woman I knew in Ohio, her husband fell off a ladder while pruning a buckeye. She hated him, but felt sorry for him, didn't think she could divorce him now. I tell myself not to death grip the ladder and free fall. I tell myself in the last second, jump away, roll, though this is not something I can practice. 3. Or it will happen when I grab a tool under the cabin and disturb a rattler stretched out from the heat or coiled around a stick of wood in winter. Until the snake moves, all those scales blend in like jeweled leaves in metal. Like wasp, it's not about menace. Every living thing here trains me to give space, but training has limits. 4. It did happen when Dylan and I put on the tin roof. We tar papered the ceiling boards, including the holes for the skylight and chimney. I drew those flimsy rectangles in red chalk, warning Dylan, do not walk there. I mean, I must have told him that 100 times. Do not walk there. It was May, 90 degrees hot, and I lost myself. I walked right across the skylight, thinking about what? How the sun doesn't quit, about our honeymoon on the Big Sur. Tina snugged inside a sequoia, smiling big as the trunk in my hand, trying to reach her. I fell through easy as air. I was falling, didn't have time to know I was. Caught hold a rafter, suspended 12 feet up from the subfloor. Don't die, Dylan said, and he grabbed my shirt and shoulder and did not let go until he fished me up. I'm sorry, was all I could say. As we got our bearings and pulled 10 up by ropes, untied the knots, set and sealed grooved edge over grooved edge. We kept at it until we made 10 rows into 10 roof. Then we walked eye level with the branches. For the first time, I was burdenless, invincible as a hawk, dangerous to believe that lie.
Well, thank you for that introduction. That was beautiful. And thank you, Julia, for telling me to come to Oregon and for inviting me here. I'm going to take my glasses off because I can read easier that way. I'm kind of backwards in that regard. So if I make a face toward you that doesn't seem appropriate, that's just because I can't see you well. One thing I wanted to echo that Jim was saying, and something that I try to emphasize in classes, and we forgot earlier today, is the purpose of this book is to encourage you to live the life you want to live. We have a lot of pressures in our society to live certain ways. And if you want to have a creative life, often somebody's going to be like, how do you pay the bills, right? There's going to be naysayers. It's not going to be Julia. She's going to be like, go for it, right? But you will encounter them. Hopefully you haven't too much. This is to say you don't have to live in build a house in the woods to do that. There's lots of different ways that you can live that life, but be willing to risk the unconventional. Obviously, we live an unconventional life. And you can also use this, you can say, well, at least I'm not as crazy as those writers in Alabama living without running water. Okay, feel free. This poem, there's a word in it that I love. It's from the kind of outdoors world. It's benighted. That's when you are hiking or rock climbing or something outdoors and you spend the night outside not meaning to. So just wanted to point that out. It's a great word. It sounds like you're getting honored, but anyway. This is called I Married Him Before He Got the Roof On. Married him before June. Before he said we're moving come September, even if we live in a tent. Married him before I saw our ceiling was so high rain would blow in. Married him before he tied an apron of nails around my waist each morning. Before I learned measuring twice and cutting once never guarantees getting it right. Before I fathomed how this is more epic than being benighted on a cliffside or backpacking slot canyons. How nothing is left safe at home base. How I must carry all that I have, all that I am, around saws and scaffolding, through rainstorms and sawdust. Yes, I married him before I got how all in, all is. Married him before he called me trouble, like he calls Dylan and the cat, a pet he never wanted, but now brushes, pours a saucer of milk and cup of water. Before I knew he would build the cat a bed and line it with his own wool sweaters. I married him before I got the measure of a man is the trouble he loves and how.
All right, so Tina got her M.F.A. She came home and the cabin was not finished. And lease was up on the apartment in September. So we had that summer. And so there was just this breathless work that we did that summer. And this poem is about that. It's called Push. If I keep saying I love you, will it be enough? When I give you a hammer and drill and ask you to brace these boards, I promised you a home by summer, but all I have to give is a roof and no dried-in walls. The only cool we get is thunderstorms drawing heat out of the air in their rush to get past. You won't live without AC. That's non-negotiable. You've said more than once, expecting repetition to make words real. I push that aside with the swelter. Come September, we're out here, no matter what. Right now, all day, every day, is me pushing you and Dylan. I love you, I say. I tell Dylan, you won't be doing this much longer. There's a place where we move past exhaustion, where our shoulders become thick with work, and impossible to know if that will be shelter enough when keep going really is all there is, all that is left.
Right now, the saw screams, spraying sawdust down my shirt and into my bra, and I don't know what itches more, that or the sweat bees stinging my elbows, or the no-see-ums gnawing my chin. Right now, the sun glowers, and the studs throw bars of shade. Right now, you're wrangling warped boards with vice grips, while a skink darts over flat plywood, flaunting his lightning blue tail. Right now, the roof is done, except for the skylight. Right now, the north wall is done, except we need a door hung. Right now, Dylan toenails another board in. Right now, I'm sweating through my overalls and socks, dripping silicone on the floor, bending more nails than I dare count. Right now, Gatorade sweats on our only table. High Life waits in the cooler. Right now, this board is cut too long. Right now, I'm going under the house to pee in the bucket. Right now, the saw trumpets, the hammer drums. Right now, birds go silent while cicadas shake air like a rattle. Right now, humidity lays a hand so heavy it will dunk, if not drown me. Right now, my knees creak when I get up. Right now, I'm taking a swallow of ice water before I once again try cutting this board back down to size. So that was what life was like when I got back from Oregon, and we were doing the big push. And we built a lot, but we didn't build everything that we needed by September. So we moved in, and we had a roof with like the hole in the sky where the skylight was. And a lot of the windows or the walls were still open. So we needed to sleep in a tent. And so this poem is from that point, those first September days when we were moved in. It's called Hinge. Labor Day, tent pitched under our roof, said camping. Brushing teeth and spitting into the woods did too. But the refrigerator smacked of luxury when I opened its door. Luxury camping, we said, of our living in the cabin as we built its walls. Rain sometimes blew in through the studs and the tent mesh. Citronella sputtered away at mosquitoes as we cooked and ate supper. Mornings we woke to butterflies, banging their slender bodies against panes we had framed. We could not fathom light could lie. Oh, they could not fathom light could lie, mean anything but open path. I offered my hand, carried each out, feeling thin feet softly tap my palm, watching wings hinge open, close, until they lifted iridescence to sun. A daily chore only those splendid weeks of camping could afford. So while we were, those first, I guess, year or so that we were there, we didn't have running water. We were trying to get the walls in, so we used a kind of a life hack that homeless people do. We got a membership at the gym, and we would go showering at the gym. So that's what this poem is called. It doesn't help arriving 15 minutes to close when the lady at the desk sweeps up or walks towards the door, keys in hand, or to be sweaty, wearing overalls with sawdust-filled cuffs and muddy boots, or to say we're just showering, not working out. We won't keep her past quitting time. Or to tell her we don't have running water, not yet. We're still building. Because the unhoused shower in gyms, we tell ourselves we're not homeless, just showerless, wallless, doorless, unplumbed. Even when we arrive early, wear swimsuits, head for the pool and hot tub to ease our aches, that lady still smirks, "Coming for your shower?" Though I trust water, lean back, spread arms, doze a bit, believing I'll never drown, I still flinch at her eyeshadow, look her up and down, searching for a waist, and cut my eyes at her scouring toilets. When trying to keep our heads above water, we climb whatever and whoever is in reach. Never help swimming for it. Every man, woman, child for oneself.
That poem just always gets me. Oof. Okay, so we're there. We're in the tent. One last thing. We have to get dried in by winter because winter's not going to stop for us. So there was this one more push. And this poem is about that. It's called September Prayer. I think the other thing to tell you guys is that our first heating source were those little oil-filled radiators. That's what we would do in the morning is we would get up, we'd make our coffee, and we would just sit on top of the radiators, we'd drink our coffee, and we'd say, "Ride them radiators." And then we would go to work. And so this is September Prayer. Wake up, set hands to measure, saw cuts and branch scrapes scabbed over, tendinitis in the right elbow getting tighter with each hammer strike. This is the arm for power and chigger bites. We never feel until the red knots swell into itches at 3 a.m. For now, you square frames in the corner. I lift glass into walls. We have to get dried in by winter. So hang with me, baby. Ride them radiators to get warmed up when a cold front shoots through. And look at the long rafters, holding ceiling boards steady. Don't you know impossible? Everything we've done so far. This wood cut by steel is coming into being. So we got in there. We got it dried in. We had Viz Queen, and so that worked in the clear stories. And sorry, I've got to find this poem that I want to read you guys. And 96. All right. So we're living in this glass house. There's a lot of tornadoes out. And this poem is, it's about that. It's also just about weather in general. It's about my pop. I grew up on a farm in South Georgia, and he's still down there. He's 90 years old. And it's about the stories we create about the people we love. And it's called Weather Myth. My world is a glass cabin. I'm building with my wife on a ridge now. Lightning is plentiful. When it strikes close, our home shakes. If it were to strike closer, our view of the woods would shatter. Lightning struck a pine on Pop's farm, so I call my dad Pop, in spring 96, and a long branch fell on 4 of his cows. One, a favorite bull, black and white speckled. Or maybe it was the blue gash he found burning in the trunk. That made the cows gallop until their 4 hearts ruptured. Pop had seen them moseying under thunder's crackle or cackle. How you say it depends on how you hear it, he said. I've never found truth in the exactness of things, have you? Pop was close to a strike once in a pasture, said it felt as if he got pushed by a wall, sent him to the grass, blackout, damned headache. He said, stings and strikes. Now that's where my memory takes hold. I heard it different. He had a bald spot on the back of his head, and I told my friends that's where lightning brought its haymaker. Just look if you doubt. Haymakered him to the dirt. Then Pop got off the ground. I remember walking behind him after I decided on my version of his story. Me, only so tall and staring at that spot way up, meaning I had a lot of growing up to do, meaning he was more than just my pop. Part of him had become myth. I was reading about the Greek gods, and Zeus kept throwing lightning bolts down at the county farmers and their peanut fields. The boundary of my whole world then, Pop, though immortal, had been slammed in the head by Zeus, and he walked as if that strike was nothing of a worry. The gods either get you or they don't. You're either here or you're no longer. Even though Tina refuses to look at our glass walls when trees start bowing in a storm, she's not one to pray. And I am my father's son. But when a storm turns into a polygon on the weather authorities map, high winds, hell, a tornado starting its spin, we join the shared hush of everyone in Alabama holding the same breath. You can literally feel it. We're all watching TV, wherever we are in our rooms, and we're all just seeing where those tornadoes are coming. And we're sending the same prayer to the sky. Don't let my neighbor get lost in your fast winds coming. Don't let a body ride a road flash flooded out. Please stop the wanderer from wandering under your sturdiest tree, and put us not on the path of a barrel whistler, a trailer, tumbler. Just love us, deliver us, hold us tight until there's damage to tell of, and we sigh, those poor people, about those taken, their names not given, so we can forget.
So I'm going to read a poem about another threat I think that we all deal with. We don't all deal with tornadoes, but I think we all deal with the threat of development, especially if you're in a rural place and you love the woods, you love the forest. Odds are we've been betting on nobody but us moving out here. Betting hunters would go on bagging bucks and leasing acreage. Betting nobody rich enough to dig a well would want to drive a rutted road past rusted semis and trailers. We bet on cedars thickening into ramparts around our glass walls, thwarting everybody from our sleeping beauty. Odds are against us winning the lottery. Friends said it's easier to get struck by lightning, claimed only the poor get duped by somebody winning. Like capitalism, I thought, but didn't say or admit we're poor enough to sometimes bet our ages, plus the date we met, will win us a year living in the French Quarter, a new truck, and a restaurant for my brother. But now new neighbors push through the cedars, gouge the ridge here to move dirt there. We bet more often, trying to win what we have right now. Odds are against the pair of bald eagles gliding over to survey the ridge we'll nest in our pines, against Trillium remaining untrampled, against Sally Branch sallying forth forever. Ain't that America for you and me? Where winning means buying it all, gating it off, keeping this wild slumber to oneself. That's the dream, to be the valiant one. Nothing like those people. So
I just want to say real quick that a juvenile bald eagle showed up just last week. So maybe.
So we live on a ridge, so there's not a lot of water. I grew up on the Coosa River and swam like every day and when it was warm enough. And I'm really fascinated by water. And so the closest quote unquote body of water, which is probably about when it's biggest, is like 50 square feet, is a puddle that's in the middle of the dirt road, at the end of the dirt road. And this is about that puddle. It also has diatoms, just in case if you don't know what diatoms are. They're single-celled creatures that the Victorians like to look at. They would have diatom parties. Like this was super geeking out, but they look like little crystals. And I really want to go to a diatom party. So if you have one, please invite me. This is called ephemeral pool. Ephemeral pool means it won't always be here. It means puddle said in a highfalutin way. Means the sun and soil will shot back this water like these dirt daubers and bees, like the coyote and turkey who track through the middle to drink it up. Biodiverse is another way of saying rain pooled on a dirt road atop a ridge in Alabama. It's a nod of respect to tadpoles shimmying and turning their opal bellies up to catch the light, and the mosquito larva flicking tail against head to dive and surface. Ephemeral means that in a single drop, there's a galaxy of single-celled creatures thriving inside delicate silica walls, just as they did when dinosaurs splashed through puddles. Their bodies are glass houses, is what some say. Maybe we should all say, when we look to diatoms and ask how to love our neighbors enough to keep from throwing any stones. So this puddle, of course, became a major source of fascination during 2020 when we were in lockdown. We would walk by this puddle and I would look at all the tadpoles and watch them develop. And then slowly the puddle started to dry up and to where it was this small and there was just literally tadpole and water, very thick together. And Jim's like, well, if you want them to survive, you better take them home. And I figured I couldn't do anything worse than death. So I took home tadpoles and put them in my casserole dishes. And you can see that here. So if you're wondering why there's tadpoles up there. And I've been doing that ever since. I raised over 400 this year. And anyway, it's been a lot of fun. So that appears in this next poem. Also, I mentioned the word Thwaites. If you don't know what Thwaites is, it's the Doomsday Glacier. Once it melts, we're kind of all screwed, especially if you're on the coast. It's called Hold Still. Oh, and because I raise the tadpoles when I go out of town, I don't know exactly what to do with them. I'm trying to, who do you ask to tadpole sit, So I'm trying to figure out where to put them, where will they get enough rain and not too much rain and all of that stuff. And so I was like, God, it's hard to be a puddle. So that inspired this poem. Hold Still. Puddles around here dry up too quick for tadpoles to frog and toad. My casserole dish hold only so much rain. Never enough tadpoles to keep the choir crooning. Once a whippoorwill blued our nights, a call so anxious we joked he couldn't get any, or enough. Like the Bob White I whistled to as a kid, he's gone. I'm trying, but I'm no good at being a puddle, or knowing how fast the weights may melt. But I get how it is hard to hold and to hold still, to be sucked at from below and above, to be overflown, to keep edges gradual. I want tadpoles to taste land and return, and bees to wade in and take a sip without drowning. But it's hard to keep clean and remain dirty enough for mosquitoes, dragonflies, and toads to be both watering hole and open womb.
Okay, so Pop's 90, and he's just been on my mind. And this is a poem about him. It's called Things Just Wear Out. So this is a text that Pop sent me. My heart valves won't close properly, and I'm too old for surgery. The backflow of blood can't get oxygen, explained the cardiologist. Fluid buildup causes swelling that thwarts blood's reach. It causes my stomach to bloat, gives me shortness of breath, a chain reaction. Since you can't repair them, throw pills at them to offset the malfunction. When I looked at the echo image, that backflow of blood didn't make me feel any secure. I'm surprised these tiny pills are doing the trick so far. The reply I can't send him. Remember when Hurricane Michael cut through the farm? And I drove south until I could saw trees off your roof and out of your driveway. Sometimes it seems I built a house in Alabama so I would know how to take care of yours. Our homes require constant care. I would fix those valves and you myself, but I'm better at working wood than heart. I'm afraid I'll make a mess keeping you alive. I don't want to see limits. Possibility is where I'm most secure. Yet I think of you dying. happens on evenings when I'm tired. I don't know what happens after I can't talk to you anymore. The day of your passing, the world will stop spinning long enough for me to fall to the ground, but not into it. And that's as far as I've come. Last poem I'm going to read tonight is a love poem to Tina, and it's about our beloved insect known as the chigger. Do you guys know what chiggers are? Oh, yes. Okay. It is called Chigger Braille. You call your skin Chigger Braille because all the bites you got in the garden, because a snake was coiled around a rabbit, and that baby's cry brought you into the meadow in your long summer dress the chiggers like to cling to. Now, days later, you can't help but scratch, worried about impetigo you fear. But the chigger braille along your spine you can't reach. Those are the banished stars from your Milky Way, puckered into dewy, waxy, red bites. Oh, my love, let me touch you there. What irritates you most, I desire. You should slap my face for thinking such. You should remind me of the rules of love. Scratch if you want, please, but don't desire what itches me. So I will keep quiet the words I find on your back, made by insects, skin hungry drunk, looking for place to burrow into home.
So, last two poems. Nothing else. When the soup's on and in the bowl, when all is salted, warmed, when bread melts butter, when the table's set and nothing else is wanted but what is within reach, a grind of pepper, your knee. My body shifts into savoring, and the nestling's wings carry it to the next branch, where clouds unlace, unraveling into jeans turned cutoffs. Then the sun snaps wide its cleanest sheets. And this final poem, I think Sophia will like this poem. It has an epigraph from Georgie Orr, who was a potter from Biloxi, and he had a very close relationship with his pots. Even though he set up a roadside stand, he didn't always want to sell them even after he sold them. So that kind of appears here. And it's called Mud Baby. Mud Baby, I am no poet, just mud, George E. Orr. Our house is a tall man. It is the serrano pepper baked atop buttermilk cornbread. It is the poof of lichen, a lacewing larva sports as bouffant. It is a cloud so shot through with light the sunbeams fan out like a peacock tail. It is the song at last, sung now and forever by Etta James. It is a desire path, deer cut through briars. It is that cucumber scent that could be kudzu bloom or copperhead or an unexpected volunteer. Our house is a quartz outcrop. It is the denim quilt pieced from cutoffs and work shirts. It is that glorious week of spring that teases us each February. Our house is a George Orr pot, one we know would be a mistake to sell, so we'd chase the buyers down, throw money in their faces, shouting, "We changed our minds, now give us our mud baby back." Our house is a mud baby, despite all the glass and wood. It is tended like a newborn, handheld as it is built. It is mud, always sticking to our step. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
If y'all have any questions, we have a little bit of time to ask Tina and Jim. No pressure.
Jim, I noticed that when we were reading,
Oh, yeah.
change things up a little bit.
Yes.
Is that like kind of how
Yes. That's, yeah. It's kind of like always trying to make it feel fresh when I'm reading it, like for me. And then it's just kind of like you get to a place, and then there's, as a fiction writer, there's always more to add into the poem. So I'm like, I'll add this part here or there. So it just kind of it happens off the cuff. But I like to have that. Such a good question. So I will tell you, I grew up on a farm, and I did not. I never built a house. My dad, he built the home I grew up in. He didn't do all the work himself. Sometimes he hired people out. But some of the time, the job I had was to plug and unplug the circular saw. The switch had worn out on it, and he loved the saw because it cut straight. But I saw him do it, and I knew it could be done. And also working on a farm, like putting post holes in the ground, that was our foundation. I knew how to do that. And so I knew that kind of thing. And then also just going to the rural studio and just seeing what they did, the kind of stuff, how they put it together. And I was talking to Julie's class earlier about having written novels. Like it's this kind of long game thing that you're writing. So I knew it was like I could do it, and I just felt confident that I could, and I'd seen it done.
I had a little bit of building experience. I worked as a wilderness counselor with delinquent boys for 3 years, and we built our own structures. We called them tents, but it was very much kind of like the cabin. We put posts in the ground, and we had like a tarp for a roof, and had rafters and those type of things. I come from a long line of construction workers. My grandfather and my dad and his brothers all did construction when I was growing up. And my grandmother's trailer, she would be like, y'all built too many bridges around here, because they'd be talking work talk. And I can't even get through, because it would be so much. So I've heard a lot of construction talk, but not something that I knew myself.
Your grandmother.
Oh yeah, my grandmother that I was named after, Mozelle, she and my grandfather built a house themselves, and moved into it before it was done. So there's a bit of a tradition there. Be careful if you name your child Mozelle. It's a great name. I highly suggest it, but they may have to build a house and live in it while they're doing it.
And I would just say, like when I was building, like when Tina was in Oregon, I would be like on the phone with Pop, on the phone with Tina, and be like, "What do y'all think about this or that?" And Pop, he helped me a lot in terms of thinking about what would work and the design. And then I would be like, well, "What do you think?" Yes.
I'm curious about what happens to the space time for, like, talk about these pushes, I would maybe the writing kind of pause for a little bit, over here.
Yeah, I kept a diary when I was writing as much as I could, but yes, there were times when it was just like, so much depended on the weather, especially until we got the roof up. And then it was just like, when we had like a few hours of light, it's like, or without rain coming in, we like went out there and did stuff. And yes, when it was time for the push, both of those times, it was just like all building all the time. So, but there would be time in there when I could write. And I was talking with Julia's class earlier about how I don't want there to be like a separation from the building of the house and writing. And that's kind of this thing that I keep moving towards as a writer. So, but, yeah.
He's kind of wrong a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. Tina's always right. I will tell you. 99.
Jim's really good about writing all the time, and even when we were doing the push, he would often write in the mornings. I would be very distracted by like, let me pack the cooler with some beer and some, limes and some sandwiches, and Jim would be up there writing while we were waiting for Dylan to actually wake up so we could go. So I find things like projects like this that need to be done very distracting, so it's hard for me to write. But when I'm doing them, and often like things that I was doing, and the projects that I picked in the house to do, I chose a lot of things that were very rote that I did over and over again. I framed a lot of windows, so I put a lot of frames in, and then I was able to hear my subconscious. So my writing was kind of kind of coming from the work in that regard. But I just I want to say that you're wrong, but also I want to say that you're like much more dedicated writer than I am, or like much more easily like focused on it than I can.
Yeah, Ryan is very. I just, I
It's a
don't
backhanded
remember.
compliment.
I know. I have a really bad memory. Actually, I don't. Like you're talking about, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I did do that. I guess the writing is just so second nature. Like I'm always kind of writing.
And if I remember right, he was going up for tenure while we were building the house too. So
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, that's right. We were talking about this earlier too. Tina's like really values savoring, which is really important. So which is really good. So, but yeah, not too much writing. So if I can, you can process at work. That's what it was. Longhand, typewriter, and then computer. So we go like that. There's something about just, again, it's a tactile thing. There's different things that come from writing things out, and it's got to be a pencil. Pen's too smooth. I need something a little bit rougher, a little more friction. And in that typewriter, you got to bang those keys, And again, and you take out the paper and you feel the back of it. Oh wow, it's like another whole thing that's been written back there, because that's like Braille. And then putting it on the computer is like again. So yes. I just am always like looking at it. When I look at it, I'm like, how do we do that? And when yes, I definitely can feel, that me that was doing those things. And so that does, I definitely feel that connection to that.
Yeah. It's like yes or no. Like sometimes reading, it puts me back in that space. But then sometimes, like just being in the house, we're like, we built this? Wow.
Yeah, we're like,
so, it can, it's like you get both ways, it's that paradoxical feeling of how did this happen? And I remember putting that in, and look at what a bad mistake I made there, So if you want to know how to build a house, come over and we'll show you what not to do.
And it's also, it's like, for me, it's, I have such a bad memory. We're talking about, so whatever gets written down, that's my memory. And so when I do read these things, it's like, oh yeah, like it just takes me, puts me. Ditch walking.
So you already have that. You can buy more books. Ask the writers to sign them. Give them a really big round of